Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's Q&A, State of the Industry. I'm Roger Beaudoin on the line with the founder of the CEO of Restaurant Rockstars. And after 20 years of creating, owning businesses, he had a total of 4 separate businesses. He's now in his 5th business with a breakfast restaurant. So he's located in Maine. He has many attributes. He's the host of the Restaurant Rockstar podcast, as well as author of Rock Your Restaurant book, creator of Sales Stars Staff Training Program, the Restaurant Rockstars Academy, and he's got a great quote that I just want to mention that I've been dying to say. So this is a business of 1,000 details, and I'm here to make sure you don't forget a single one. So makes sense. He's got an MBA in business. So want to first introduce Roger. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, and then we'll kind of dive a little bit more of where you've been and where you're going.
Yeah, so I guess my restaurant journey started, Scott, about 25 years ago when I started my first restaurant, and I had very limited experience. I had been a bartender in restaurants, but I had never been a manager or an owner of one. But I did see an opportunity, and I was literally obsessed with 3 things that I guess became the key to my success. One was staff training, development, recognition, and rewards, building what I call the foundation of your restaurant, which is your dream team staff. And then the second one was cost controls and maximizing profit. And then the third obsession of mine was marketing, firepower, and affinity. And I believe that if I could combine those 3 things, it would be a huge competitive advantage in my business. And that's essentially what I did. And then gradually, year by year, my business grew. I continued to put systems in place because I'm a huge believer in systems. And then ultimately, that dream team staff that I created lowered the team had such a vested interest in my business based on me leading by example and empowering them to make solid judgment decisions and recognizing and rewarding their performance, that they literally had my back, and I didn't have to be there all the time. I could literally start other real estate projects or do other businesses. And then pretty soon I became a customer in my own restaurant. I didn't work there, but I was there at night with my family, and I was trying to be as anonymous as I could. And to tourists I was, and to regulars I was not. But I was watching my staff shine and my customers having a whole lot of good times. And that's really where it all began. So that was a 2-decade run. One restaurant led to 2, led to 3, led to 4. And then back in 2014, we decided to focus all of our efforts on building this company called Restaurant Rockstars. I can tell you more about that. But we sold all the restaurants and moved out west and continued to work on refining these systems and then putting them online for other operators and managers to benefit from.
No, that's great. So you mentioned that you love the customer service and the marketing and having a system. But I'm curious, with the MBA background, take me back a little bit first, just get to know you a little bit more as a person, and definitely want to get into the Rockstar Academy. I think that's got some great advantages for business owners. But have you always been an entrepreneur when you were young, or tell me about how did it begin? How did you get where you are before you owned your own first business?
Well, my dad was self-employed. My father got out of the Marine Corps in the early 50s, and he took over my grandfather's trucking company with my favorite uncle. And the 2 brothers ran this trucking company, and it was a small regional trucking company in Massachusetts. And I never thought at the time that I would ever take that over. I never really had an interest in the trucking business. But I started, reading books and getting inspired by people like Steve Jobs and the Apple story. And I think that's one of the catalysts for me actually going back to graduate school. And I thought, it was actually 2 choices, because my dad was a big military guy, like I told you, but he never encouraged me to be in the military. And I certainly would have gone. I remember, registering for selective service when I was 18 years old, and I certainly would have gone if there was a draft, but there was no war on. But I made this choice, and it's a funny one because Top Gun, the movie with Tom Cruise, was like all the rage back then. And I was so inspired by that movie, and I was torn between going back for an MBA or going to Naval Officer Candidate School and becoming a Navy officer. I wanted to fly. I wanted to do all that kind of stuff. And ultimately, I was too tall to fly. I'm 6'6". I was 6'6" back then. And my parents said to me, you could grow to be 7 feet tall, and then that career is all out the window. So if you got a passion for flying, you can take flying lessons, but you're You're not going to fly for the military or the commercial airlines. So that was kind of my first career path that got thrown out the door. And instead, I ended up going to business school. And a really inspiring experience. I had entrepreneurial experiences in grad school. I had a couple of companies that I started, nothing huge. I developed a pizza delivery service all over campus that was really lucrative. And I simply ran the business, and I hired the drivers, and they ran pizzas and subs all over campus 7 days a week. And I did that for 2.5 years. That was pretty powerful business at the time. I also sold ski and sports equipment on campus to students and whatnot. So, those were small little dabble businesses. And then, I had a real passion for the sport of skiing, and I ended up moving to the ski resort in Maine. And before I actually moved there, I was on job interviews there. And that's literally where I started my first restaurant. And I saw this opportunity because it was the second largest ski resort in the Northeast at the time. And it was such an anomaly, Scott, because the infrastructure of that town had not kept up with the huge growth of the ski resort. And it wasn't like other resorts where there's condominiums and retail stores and, all sorts of bars and restaurants and all that type of thing. There was literally a handful of restaurants, maybe 3 or 4. And there were video stores back then and, typical ancillary businesses. But they all had lines out the door because they couldn't service all the customers because there was no competition. But the interesting thing was none of them did a particularly good job of customer service. They didn't do anything sophisticated or special in terms of the products they offered. And on all these job interviews over the course of weeks and weeks, I would visit all these businesses and I'd be like, wow, they're not doing this. They could be doing that. This restaurant's got terrible service. The food is marginal. So that's kind of when the idea, sort of light bulb went off in my head, and I decided to start a restaurant. And the only reason I went into the restaurant business was when I was in graduate school, I spent 4 months living in Italy, and I was really inspired by all the pizzerias on every corner, the wood-fired brick oven pizzas and the old Neapolitan way of making pizza. And, everyone knows pizza was invented in Italy, and it's a completely different product than what people are used to in America. So I wanted to bring that Italian authentic experience to America and do things as authentic as I could. And that was kind of the brainchild for the first restaurant. And as soon as we opened, we had lines out the door. And it was such a, it was a 75-seat restaurant. It had beer and wine only. We played soft jazz music. It had a European ambiance. We literally transformed an ugly space that had 4 failed restaurants in it before we got there. No one had a good concept. No one had a great service level or product offering. And literally 4 restaurants had come and gone. So, we had to overcome the stigma of the space, but it was the only thing that was really affordable at the time. And so we got in there and we transformed this business or this building on a shoestring budget and turned it into this wood-fired pizzeria. And it was all about the show. I believe now, as I did then, that the restaurant business is about entertainment. It's show business. And every single employee that interacts with a customer, every staff person is an actor or an actress on stage. And I train my staff in that. And I encourage them to use their unique personalities and to entertain the customer, to educate the customer, and to inform the customer. And that sort of formed the basis for the staff training program I created called Sales Stars. And, we continue to sell Sales Stars today, and it is part of the Academy, and I'm happy to answer all those questions. But it was really the powerful thing that really launched the business because we were touching customers in a personal way. We were building relationships with those customers. Customers were coming back and asking for those people that had served them by name, saying, oh, I really want Michelle to be my server tonight. I really want, and everybody elevated the spirit of the restaurant, and they became brand ambassadors for the business. And that's when the empowerment began and the recognition and the rewards. And that's when the turnover went down. I mean, this industry is ripe with turnover. They say the average tenure of a new restaurant employee, and I'm talking pre-COVID-19. Let's just forget about the virus right now. Let's talk about 6, 7, 8 months ago. You hire somebody and you get them up to speed in the job, you train them and whatnot, and 4 months later, you're losing them for a variety of reasons. Either they quit, they get fired, they didn't work out, and now you got to replace that person, get that person up to speed in the job. And the statistics say that costs a restaurant something like $3,000 or $4,000 every time that happens in lost time, productivity, training, wages, all that kind of stuff, insurance. And it's just crazy. No restaurant can afford that. So this training program that I created 2 decades ago in a seasonal business, because again, we were at a ski resort. I was only able to open 4 months a year because it was not a 4-season resort at the time. It is now, but when I had it, it wasn't. So the margins were slim and there was no margin for error. So I figured, okay, all these things have to combine to give me every advantage. And the staff really built the business with me. And I taught them to serve and I taught them to sell, and suggestive selling became part of the entertainment. And we assumed the sale. My staff would go up to the table and they would have a game plan. They wouldn't just be order takers that we gave the customer the menu, they look at it, they decide what sounds good to them. That leaves so many thousands of dollars a month on the table in restaurants that don't train their staff to suggestively sell. And people think, or they believe, that it's a superior experience if we ask them first, have you ever been here before? And if they say no, then it gives you an opportunity to tell them everything that's unique and special about your restaurant, what sets you apart from the competition. So that was really the first foundational element, the service. And I continue to believe in that entertainment philosophy today.
No, I tell you, I mean, from getting to know you prior and watching your podcast, and one thing that stands out to me is you've got a vision, right? So we've got Uber Eats now. So you had that back in college. Unfortunately, just think about where you could be if you monetize that to now to your successful program. And then you also mentioned the tenure of people losing tenure. If I'm stand corrected, I believe you have a 96% tenure rate when you have those 4 restaurants. And
yeah.
Tell me more a little bit about that. Like, how are you successful in obviously fun, entertainment, family, and customer service, but there's got to be more to it than that.
Well, there really is. I mentioned the recognition and rewards. I'll go into that a little bit, but it really starts with leading by example. When I ran those restaurants and when I was systemizing them, I was never too important to pick up trash in the parking lot, to wash a window, to bus a table, to back up any of my team members when the place was really hopping. It's like I was right in there in the trenches with them, and that lasted for a couple of years. And that really built the respect side. I wasn't this dictator that walked around telling people what to do. It's like I built their respect. It was all about teamwork, where everyone was encouraged to help each other out. If you got a moment, you see someone who needs help, you jump in and help them. We had a philosophy on the dining room floor: every table is your table, which means even though you assign sections to servers and people, if somebody in a different section sees a customer with a need or a problem, they drop their fork on the floor and they need a new one, or they spill a glass of water, or they need a new bottle of wine. It's like everybody keeps their eyes open and anticipates needs and communicates. And the Sales Stars program I'm talking about is so unique in that everyone was cross-trained, because literally hosts and bus staff and bartenders and servers all interact with the customer. But in most restaurants, the host simply greets people at the door and seats them. And if there's a waiting list, you take their name. But they rarely do anything other than that, and answer the phone, of course. And the bus staff, most restaurants, they're seen and not heard. They clear the glasses and the plates of the way, and they try not to get in the way. And obviously the servers serve the food and the bartenders serve the drinks and all that kind of stuff. Well, this training program choreographed the service between all 4 of those people, and every single person was trained in product and restaurant knowledge, and any single one of them had access to our point of sale system, could make a suggestion to a customer, could make a sale, whether they were hosting, whether they were busing, it didn't matter. And that doubled and tripled sales in my restaurants year after year, because everyone used that unique personality and built relationships with the customer, kept their eyes open. And, a busser could see an almost empty bottle of wine on the table and ask the customers, did you enjoy that bottle? Would you like me to bring you another one? Would you like another cocktail? What did you order for dinner? Can I make a recommendation? And they were so well trained and so knowledgeable that that was a natural extension of the basic job that they were supposed to do, bussing the table or hosting. It was a beautiful thing. So, the Sales Stars program today includes how you do that. So then let's talk about the recognition and the rewards part. There's something called the 1-Minute Manager. It's a book by, I think the author's name is Ken Blanchard, if memory serves. And that was really inspirational, because it means that And you don't even take a minute. When you catch somebody doing something right, no matter how important or how trivial it is, if they're doing something well, you constantly walk around the floor. The dining room, the bar, the restaurant is your office. It's not in the back of the house. You don't hide back there. It's like you're part of the team and you're recognizing people for doing the great job that they do. So when you notice somebody doing something right, you give them a 1-minute praise, and it doesn't take a minute. It could be 10 seconds, 15. Say, I just noticed you were doing that. That's awesome. We really appreciate you working here. Thank you very much, whatever. And then when you notice them doing something that isn't part of what you would expect, you always pull them aside, never give them a reprimand in front of a teammate. But you revisit a job description. I've always believed in very accurate and detailed job descriptions that people signed off on every line item before they actually start the job. And now you've got a tool that you can revisit if something goes awry with their performance. You can sit them down and say, hey, when you started the job, this is what we agreed was important, and I noticed you're not doing this. And then you throw it in their court and you say, what can you do to get back on track? Or how do you think the problem can be solved, as opposed to telling them? And then you put the onus on them to follow through. So that's just a way of managing. And then you go to the recognition and rewards part. So very simply, we had a program called Difference Dollars, and anybody can do this. We had 52 employees in my largest restaurant. It was a 300-seat restaurant. Obviously, all 52 people didn't work every single shift, but the busiest ones, of course, were the Friday and Saturday night shifts. And so we recognized 2 different people each week, one on a Friday and one on a Saturday, because the majority of staff would work both those days. And sometimes I would recognize a person. Sometimes it could be a manager. The winner could even be nominated by a team member. It didn't matter. It could be something like, the busboy is walking through the kitchen carrying a heavy bucket of dishes, and the floor was wet, and he slips and the whole thing goes crashing down. And there's a server that just happens to be in the kitchen, has a quick second. She jumps in, helps him pick up the mess. I mean, she didn't have to do that, but that was the team spirit, right? So if somebody recognized that, that's a big deal. So I would get up on a Friday and a Saturday night, and I would literally gather the whole team together before the business opened for dinner. It was probably 4:30. And there'd be, 25, 30 people gathered around me. And then I would recognize this person. I would tell everyone what they did that made a difference. And then I would hand them a $20 bill and a can of Red Bull and basically say, that was so amazing. Thanks so much for working here. You are such a great team member. Here's $20 and a can of Red Bull. And that was Difference Dollars. And then I would type up what the difference was that they made in the restaurant. And our whole employee wall, that we had this hallway, that led to the employee sort of break room area kind of thing. And the hallway was lined with all of these, framed, this person did this and that person did that. And it was amazing when people had downtime and they would just literally, before their shift started or whatever, they would just read these things, and it would just inspire you and elevate you to know what was expected, and that if you didn't have that philosophy, you weren't going to last very long in our business. So that was just one thing. And then I noticed that I think I was at a large supplier's warehouse once, and this goes back again 20 years ago. But I'm walking by this conference room, and there's all this merchandise in there, and there's electronics, and there's clothing items, and there's sporting goods, and all this kind of stuff. And it's left over from some promotional giveaway, and all the stuff didn't get left over, didn't get given away. And I just happened to ask, we were a good customer, we spent a good amount of money with the supplier. And I said, yeah, do you have anything that is just gathering dust that has value that I could use for employee rewards? The next thing you know, the next day the truck shows up, and half that stuff I saw in the conference room ends up at my back door. And I'm like, wow, that's awesome. And I learned a long time ago, you don't ask, you don't get. And then from that point on, I asked every single one of my suppliers. If it were liquor companies, I got all these free neon beer signs, those neon signs that hang in the window. I got stuff from everybody I bought from. And we filled this closet full of all these prizes that had value. And then whenever someone did something really amazing, we'd say, hey, let's go take a trip to the closet, And for those who had worked for a while, they knew what the closet was. But if it was a brand new employee that worked there for 2 days and they just helped the busboy pick up the dishes, hey, let's go take a trip to the closet. Like, what do you mean? What's the closet? And I'm like, yeah, just follow me, And then I open the door and there's all this stuff everywhere. And I'm like, you see anything you like? It's yours. Take it. And they're like, are you kidding me? Really? And they're walking out with really valuable stuff. It didn't cost me anything. But I can't tell you what that did to raise the morale and to sustain this culture of what I call hospitality, family, and fun in the restaurant, where the culture was all about hospitality. Everyone was treated like family. The customers were family, the staff was family, and everybody was having fun. And that really elevated the ship and continues to do so. That was a very simple philosophy, but that really helped build the business also.
No, I think as you mentioned, one key thing is you mentioned like entertainment, right? So
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
being a part of the show, being a part of the business, if you weren't in it, you probably weren't going to last very long. But tie that in, it can't help me but think about when a lot of people say, like psychologists, or if you are looking for a new adventure in life, and they always say, go back to when you were a kid, right? And think when you're a kid, what did you love to do? And go back to your play stage. And what I'm getting here is, you mentioned you had this big toy chest, basically, if you think about it. So it's a toy chest as a kid, open it up and you see everything. You probably haven't, that memory comes back when you're a kid and just having fun and being recognized and be a part of something bigger. And, the one thing that you mentioned kind of overall besides entertainment is the system. So that is all part of the system, and the walk down the hall, and it brings clients in and, patrons to see this great environment, then they become a part of it. And, that leads to profits, so all of it tied together with suggestive selling, entertainment. And I've got to throw this out there because I want people to know a little bit about your businesses. So you've actually had a pizza place, you had a steakhouse, a bar with bands, a Mexican cantina, as well as I mentioned breakfast. So you've covered the gambit when it comes to full service and liquor and you name it. So, and one thing that's always bottom line, that's profits. So with the system, it's kind of staggering. The average is what, 6 to 10%, average profit. And if I stand correct, if I remember, your average 21% for overall. I wanted to tell us a little bit more how that, that plays in with maybe some other programs. Like we went over the staffing and maybe the Rockstar Academy or the menu maximizer and how that can play a part.
Well, volume of sales will impact profit if a menu is designed for maximum profit. And I am now a consultant and a restaurant coach, and every quarter I take on, a limited number of new clients, but it's surprising. It's not surprising anymore to me because I've seen it so often. But when I say this to you in the audience, I'm sure it might be surprising at how many restaurants I've come across over the last 5-6 years that have not designed a menu to maximize profit. And what that means is they might have variety and appeal to the customer on that menu, but a lot of them have never costed out every single item, every single ingredient that goes into every single dish, right down to the parsley or the garnish. If it goes on the plate, it's got a cost to it. And they have absolutely no idea what it costs them to serve that plate to the customer, not the labor piece, just the cost of goods that goes into each dish, right? And they don't know what the profit is then because they just randomly assign a price to something. And that's sort of a huge hit or miss way of designing it. And sometimes they look at what the competition is doing and they look at a competition's menu and, oh, Joe's serving a chicken parmesan and he's got barbecue chicken nachos or whatever it is. And then they see the prices that the competition is charging, and they either undercut that person just a little bit or they price very similarly or maybe just slightly higher. But they have absolutely no idea what ingredients are going into Joe's chicken parm. And, they've never done the homework that is so essential. So the bottom line in what I find out is, and I've done this with numerous clients, I've worked out a formula and I dive deep and I can exactly figure out once the menu is costed out properly. And, I generally ask a restaurant, work with your chef or your kitchen manager. And sometimes they don't know that if they buy from, like one of the large big 3 food service suppliers, they have these executive test kitchens with executive chefs. And if you're a good customer and if you do business with them, you can actually go into that test kitchen, show them your menu in advance and say, you know what, I'm not sure what the profit is on this. I'm buying all these ingredients from you. These are the prices I'm charging. Let's work out the formulas. They'll actually do that for you if it's never been done. But once that's done, then I will take a look at least the last 6 months of volume. with a product mix report, and I'll print out the volume of sales, and then I'll transfer the volume of sales to each individual item, and I will rank things in terms of this is the most profitable, the second profitable, the third profitable, and whatnot in each category. And what I find out is 9 times out of 10, for whatever reason, lower profit items are bigger sellers, they're more popular sellers, and they're taking dollars away from the more profitable items in each category. So a specific example on the appetizer side, I see that a restaurant has maybe 6 or 7 different appetizers or starters, and one might contribute a $3 profit to the, to gross profit, and the next one might contribute $5, and the next one might contribute even $6.50 or more, depending. And now, every time you sell the lower profit item, you could be losing $2, $3 and change every time those are selling. And the problem is you're paying your kitchen staff the highest wages in the restaurant, and they're preparing everything. So why wouldn't you want to maximize the profit on each item, so that you're maximizing your profit? Let's talk about the entrees. It's scary enough on the appetizer side, but suddenly when you've got, $12, $15, $18, $20 entrees and more, you could be losing $10, $12, $15 profit on the lower ones versus the higher ones. So a proper menu design, literally in each category, the appetizers or the entrees, you should be losing pennies. The spread difference should be 10 cents, 15 cents, 38 cents, something like that. But you can't afford to lose $3 every time you sell this versus that. So you got to go back to the drawing board and re-engineer that menu. And it's amazing. So my current client that I'm working with, we just did this exercise, and it's a large lunch and dinner restaurant. And they have 81 different items on their menu between lunch and dinner. And I'm talking about burgers, I'm talking about sandwiches, salads, appetizers, dinner entrees, lunch entrees. I mean, there's 81 different items, and they're all different. And so obviously I had their chef cost everything out because nothing was up to date. So I got up-to-date, accurate costing. And then I went to work and I plugged everything into my template. And I found out that over the last 6 months, this restaurant had lost a potential profit of $183,000 because with such a deep menu and such a huge spread between the items, and the fact that the lower profit items were more popular or bigger sellers, they really wanted to sell this, but they're selling this, and they're leaving all that money on the table. When all they have to do, and sure, there's homework involved, but you redesign that menu, I can't think of any other more significant impact on the bottom line that's going to increase that net profit from 6% up much higher. Suddenly you're at 10, 12, 15, just on that one item alone. So that was one thing we did. The marketing piece I talked about, we encouraged affinity. Affinity means this powerful sense of belonging where a customer feels that's my place. And so few restaurants can do that well. Everyone spends on traditional advertising. It's so expensive, thousands of dollars on radio and print and TV and all this stuff that's a shotgun approach. Instead of marketing to your existing customer and figuring out ways, if they already like me, how do I get them in more often? It's far less expensive to market to a current customer that loves you versus constantly trying to find new customers that don't know you. So mug clubs are huge. We had a big beer business. I think we had 20 different beers on tap, and we mixed drinks and bottles of wine and all that kind of stuff. We had a busy bar at this restaurant, and we started this mug club, and it started with 50 mugs and then 100 and then 200. And these people paid us $50 every single year to belong to this club just for the cachet of having this custom mug that they could sort of decorate, and put their name on it and all that sort of thing. And they felt exclusive by being in the bar with this mug versus the average customer that comes in and just orders a pint of beer. So it's sort of a hook, And the interesting thing is, when I sold my restaurants back in 2014, this particular restaurant had 1,200 Mug Club members that spent $50 a year. And that's approaching like $50,000 in cash flow just for these memberships for people to buy the mug, And there was a lot of value-added service, and there was VIP service. And it still amazes me today, Scott, that my bartenders, when that mug club kept growing and growing, it was like homework. They were back in school. It's like they studied these customers. They learned what their favorite beer was and what their favorite, everything was, and, what their birthdays were. And they got to know these people on a personal level. And then whenever somebody walked through the door that was recognized, the bell would ring. They had this big giant bell behind the bar, and one of the bartenders would ring the bell, and all of a sudden everyone would look at the door, and now this person's a VIP walking in the door, and now we're pouring his beer before he gets within 50 feet of the bar. And if there's a crowd, the beer is literally getting passed through the crowd to this customer, so he doesn't even have to fight through the crowd. That was VIP service. Blew me away how awesome that worked, and how many people my staff got to know. And then the kicker wasn't necessarily the $50,000, although what restaurant can't use an extra 5, 10, 15 or more thousands of dollars to improve the place or hire a manager or whatever. But these people were so loyal and they had such a great time. Now they're dining and they're coming into the restaurant spending money 3 and 4 days a week instead of every 2 weeks you might see somebody, or every once a month you might see a customer. This is called affinity building. It's a very simple thing. And we teach people how to do that as well. So that was the marketing piece. All of these things raised that net profit through the roof. I failed to mention that we got the $50,000 in cash, but that was free and clear cash flow because the Mug Club was sponsored by one of my supplier partners. And all they had, they put their logos on the mugs, and they had banners inside the restaurant, and we'd talk them up on the microphone and all that kind of stuff. And every year they would buy us the t-shirts that every Mug Club member got, and they would buy us new mugs because we'd always have a new supply on hand. And we had something, loyalty programs are huge in this business. And we had a mag stripe credit card that was branded to our restaurant, had our logo on it. We called it the kickback card, and it could be programmed with our point of sale service to randomly award prizes to a customer who had a Mug Club membership. So everyone carries around this card in their wallet, and every time they come in and they order a beer or they sit at a table and order a meal, they would hand that to their server or their bartender. It would get run through the point of sale system, and it would randomly award prizes. One minute you're just sitting down for dinner, and the next minute you want a trip to the prize closet, because after a while we had so many prizes we couldn't give them away to just the staff. So now we started awarding them to the customers. It was huge. And then you could track spending. You could track who's the biggest spender this week, who's the biggest spender for the year. And those people got custom branded bar stools, these beautiful mahogany bar stools with really sturdy metal legs. And they stayed in the restaurant, but literally whenever the customer came in, they came out of another closet, and here's your personal stool with your name burned in the top by a local artist with the number of your mug and all this. This is just recognition. So it's like building affinity with your customers is just so powerful.
No, I think that you mentioned, so a lot of people wonder, like, how's that going to work now? I took some notes here, and I could see it very much working now. So being very involved with the restaurants and the magazines. And so kind of just starting point, you mentioned, your sales program. So what are people going to want? They're going to want entertainment. When they come back, they're going to want something new. They're going to want something over the top. They're going to want customer service. And then also when it comes to the products themselves, a lot of people a lot of companies are going to a more condensed menu right now because you don't know what's going to happen. So if you're going to go to a condensed menu, you might as well make it profitable, right? So you can condense that, keep your favorites, and then really take the time to use the menu program. And then lastly, the value and, customers and being appreciated. So value is a third thing, with the Mug Club and people coming in and getting prizes. That's what people will want when the restaurant's open. That's what I've seen. All three cases are the three big points that definitely will profit and customers. And then to kind of wrap it all together, I think don't you have one big program that if somebody's looking to kind of do everything that you do a little bit more in depth on?
Yeah. I started talking in this conversation about those three fundamentals. Obviously, the staff training piece and the development piece is so important. And then the cost control and profit max piece is important. And then the marketing. That is like the meat and potatoes of the academy. The Restaurant Rockstars Academy is inclusive of the staff training system called Sales Stars. There are two versions of that. There's a full serve sit down restaurant version. There's also a fast casual version for quick serve restaurants and food trucks. That is included in the Academy, of course. It's a turnkey, available 24/7 from any device thing. Here's your system. You want to train your staff? Here you go. The recognition and rewards piece, it's all in there. The second piece is cost controls, because before you can maximize your profit, you really need to know your costs. And there's so many restaurants out there that don't take a regular inventory. Or if I mention that to a new client, you'd be surprised at how many times they say, oh yeah, I take inventory. It's like every week I walk around and I write down what I need to order. I'm like, no, that's not inventory. I'm talking about valuing at the end of a period, the end of a week, at the end of the month, knowing exactly what the value of everything you have on hand is, and then calculating your true food and beverage costs from that inventory. And if they do it at all, sometimes they do it after every 30 days. Sometimes they do it every 45 days. It's like whenever they get around to it. And I'm thinking, you know what? You could be losing money every single day for 30 or 45 days until you figure out your food cost just went up 5%. You got to do this every single week for at least 3 weeks in a row until you find what I call your sweet spot. And that means, okay, for some restaurants, a good food cost might be 30%. For a high-end steakhouse and seafood place, it's probably closer to 40%. But nonetheless, you need to know what that comfort zone is, what that sweet spot is, and you got to stay there 3 weeks in a row. So you might take an inventory the first week and you might find out, oh, my food cost is a 35. And then the second week you take it and it comes out to be a 31. And then the next week it comes out to be a 40. You don't know what your food cost is. It's all over the map. There's no consistency. Maybe you've got a theft problem and your steaks are walking out the back door, but you can't wait 30 days to figure that out. So that's why I suggest, okay, I know it's a little bit of work, but you got to do this every week until the consistency is there, meaning if your sweet spot is 30%, you want to see a 30, a 30.5, another 30, maybe a 31, but you know you're in that zone. So then, and only then, can you go to a once a month inventory. And then when you take it, as long as you're still in that 30 or 30.5 zone, keep taking it every month. If you take it 2 months later and suddenly it's a 38, you got to go back to every week and figure out where the problem is. Maybe that's where the theft or the spoilage or the waste is. But so many restaurants don't do that. That's just one piece. So knowing your true food and beverage costs. But then the second, your biggest expense is your payroll. So you've got to monitor payroll week to week, and you got to find your sweet spot there and figure out, what makes sense in terms of, effective scheduling and cutting people diligently when you no longer need them. A lot of restaurants are just, they throw a schedule together and people are on the floor, and when it gets busy, they got the staff, but then an hour later it's not busy, but 5 people are still standing around when 2 people could close the place. It's like you got to be efficient and diligent on that. And then during COVID right now, it is critically important to know what your daily break even is. I mean, it's always important to know what it costs you to open the doors to your restaurant. And that means you've got the mortgage to pay, you've got the rent and the utilities and the cost of the goods and the payroll and the trash removal services and all these things. But every day it costs you this much, whether you serve 1 customer, you serve 150 customers, or nobody walks in the door. And now that restaurants are pivoting and they've got limited service and limited hours, maybe they're open 7 days a week. Maybe they're only open 4 days a week because 3 days a week you just can't make any money, but you got to know what that number is. And that's in the Academy. It's like we teach you all these things. So there are 14 fully automated spreadsheets in the Academy, and then there are audio tutorials that explain at the lowest level, and I don't mean that in a demeaning way, but I mean that to say there are a lot of people that hate math, they're intimidated by math, they avoid this stuff because they think it's just gonna freak them out. So these audio tutorials are designed very simply to explain what these numbers are, what they mean, where to find them, how to plug them into the spreadsheet, and what the end result should look like for you to be in your sweet spot. So it's literally a crash course in restaurant finance for people who hate math. And here's an easy system to now take inventory every week until you find your sweet spot, to calculate your labor cost every week and make sure you're not losing money on labor, your daily break even, all these different things that are so important. That's included as well. And then there's the marketing piece that includes, how to start a mug club, how to market your restaurant for little or no money. So you're not throwing thousands of dollars out the window with with marketing programs where you just can't track the return on investment, Scott, so many of these things on a wing and a prayer. Oh, somebody walks in the door, I'm going to put you in this newspaper or this magazine, and it's going to give you all this exposure. And restaurant owners say, I'll try it. I'll try it for a couple of months and we'll see what happens. Well, the thing is, you'll never know if that magazine ad drove any business into your restaurant unless everybody who walks through the door says, hey, Joe, I saw you I heard you on the radio and that brought me in, which never happens. It's not trackable. So why would you waste your money on it? You got to do what I call guerrilla marketing programs that cost little money, that have proven ROI. And I've got several powerful programs in the Academy that do just that. And it's all about being creative and resourceful and going outside the walls of your restaurant and figuring out in your local community who can promote your business. How can you reward other businesses to drive business to your restaurant? And it works amazing, some of those programs. And then once you have a new customer, you've got a program to bring them back again and again, And then there's the social media piece that's so important, and all the other aspects of marketing that combine for, this affinity building I'm talking about. And then go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say, I think that you mentioned just kind of recap and a little bit of the information, because you mentioned the infinity, and I want to touch base on that part, just because of the brand ambassador is such a large thing right now. For
Right.
example, my 16-year-old daughter is a high elite softball player, so she
Nice.
just won't disclose the company right now, but they sent her out a new cleats, brand new cleats, haven't hit the market yet. And why? Because she's very active on social media.
Uh-huh.
So what is she? She's a brand ambassador. So many people, especially getting back into reopening, keeping their customers, developing brand ambassadors, not only brand ambassadors as your clients, but brand ambassadors of your employees. So if you've got both end of spectrums, which you provide, I mean, what more could you ask for in that aspect when it comes to infinity? But what else can you add to that infinity piece of it?
Well, it's actually, we had a program that was based on the concept of cash cows. Cash cows, I can't talk highly enough because every restaurant can't have too many of those. And for those, I mean, it's a very popular term, but for those who may not know what I'm talking about, a cash cow is a menu item that costs very little to serve the customer. We're talking pennies, not dollars. Yet it has a very high perceived value by the customer. So by virtue of what it is, what it looks like, what it smells like, and how it's packaged and presented to the customer, when it gets served, they look at it and they say, wow, it's got what I call wow factor. Okay, so you come up with a couple of these things and then they cost you so little, you can actually sell them in the restaurant for really high profit, which lowers your overall food costs. That's the first beautiful thing. But more importantly, you can use this with this brand ambassador idea we're talking about, where I went into the local community when I was building my business 2 decades ago again. And I did this for a couple of years until I didn't need to do it anymore, but it had an immediately powerful effect. So I took my most popular cash cow and I took a professional photograph of it and I created a 4-color business card with that menu item on the front of the card. And then I put the value proposition, which meant, this thing cost me less than $1 to serve the customer, yet I charged $10 for it because it had that much value. So now on the coupon in each corner, there's a big $10, $10, $10, right? And then I put this copy that said something like, and my cash cow is garlic nuts, which you've probably seen before. And at pizza place, pure profit. It's simply leftover dough from, I shouldn't say leftover. Let's just say you have a dough roller that rolls out your dough balls and you're serving 3 different sizes of pizza, but then obviously the dough is going to rise when you bake it in the oven, so it doesn't need to overflow the pizza pan. So you take a pizza cutter and you just kind of cut the trimming of the dough around the edge of the pan. And now you can tie this into a knot and you can brush it with olive oil and sprinkle a little Parmesan cheese and a little minced garlic on there, and you can bake it in the wood-fired brick oven I was telling you about. And I think it cost me about 25 or 30 cents for an order of 8 of these things, because we had a little ramekin of marinara sauce that we also made homemade. The dough is free because the dough is already costed out in the price of that next pizza I sold. So the dough is absolutely free. So it's just a little Parmesan cheese sprinkled and a ramekin of marinara for dipping, which added to the wow factor. So now I can charge $10 for something that cost me a quarter. And we sold thousands of these things. So it's like, that's how you print money in this business. So you can't have too many cash cows on your menu. One, they lower your food costs. And two, they're hugely profitable to sell. But three, here's the kicker. Now you can give them away. So what I did with these business cards was I went within a 5 or a 10-mile radius of my restaurant, and I went to non-competing businesses like tanning salons and beauty shops and retail stores and bed and breakfast inns and a car wash and, anyone I could find. And I introduced myself to the owner or the manager, and I said, hey, I got this restaurant. In the beginning, I've just opened up, and I'd really like to introduce it to people. So I'm giving this $10 appetizer away absolutely free if you'll just give these to your customers. So I'd have a stack of 500 to start. Here you go. Just give them away. It's value added for your customer. But here's the kicker for you. If you stamp the back of this coupon so I can track where it's coming from, I'm now going to give you 10% back for every dollar you drive through the door. And I'm going to have my staff, every time a coupon's presented, they're going to staple the guest check to that. And then I'm going to track how much the customer spent. And then I'm going to give you 10%. And you can bring your wife in for dinner and just sign the check and not pay for it. You can give these out to your employees for staff incentives. You can do whatever you want with it. And I'm going to give you a gift card at the end of every week or month. And we'll just, we'll keep it behind the counter, and you just come in and you can use it. And it was a beautiful thing. So what I found out was for the cost of every garlic knot coupon that came back, which was 25 cents, the average spend in the restaurant was about $65 or $70. Because at a minimum, 2 people would come in, they'd get their free appetizer, they'd have drinks and dinner. Sometimes 3 or 4 people would come in, and the check average was even higher. But over a period of time, I averaged it, and the average spend was $70, and it cost me a quarter and my time to build a relationship with that business owner. So interestingly, at the end of that trial period, after a couple of months, some of these businesses were driving $10,000 in the door in new business. It was amazing. So
that is a wow, Cal.
It was a powerful program for sure. And I did it for years until I didn't have to do it anymore. But now we teach people how to do things like this. That's called guerrilla marketing. That's not spending thousands of dollars on something you don't know if it's going to work. It's like minimal expense, fail fast, fail cheap. If you're an outgoing person, go build relationships in the community. Go up to hotels and concierges and taxi drivers and who else is meeting the public that needs to eat, right? It's that simple.
Yeah, and if you're not, now with the reopening, there are a lot of new positions that are opening. So why not add a position for each somebody once a day that gets them outgoing, some employees that could go do it, send them out that they're that are brand ambassadors of the brand, so they actually will sell the brand themselves. And I just kind of want to recap everything where we are. So
okay.
So if you're looking for an entertainment built system, and if you're looking for the opportunity for profits, if you're between 6 to 10% average and you maybe want to double or triple. Or if you're looking for turnaround, or your tenure is not so well, and you like to potentially be up to 90%, truly believe Roger's got a program for you. And not only that, whether you're a corporate level or whether you're a franchise that maybe needs some help, or you're an independent and you see a great opportunity right now to open up, or you're just now reopening up, but you need to do something different. I think, Roger, you've got a great program. You offer many different levels of your expertise, many years of solid returns, and that you can't say for a lot of people that actually back up what they say. So of course, we're going to have some information down below where you'll be able to link up to all Roger's products. So we'll have that posted. But Roger, anything you want to end, just kind of recaps, maybe some things that we missed, or that, you being a business owner now, you're going through the COVID-19 and just like everybody else. Anything you want to add to your system that you use yourself that you like to share, or more about the products as well?
Well, I think we've gotten really in depth into what I've done and some really great ideas that I think are immediately actionable for the audience right now. But if there's any questions, I didn't mention, well, you could probably tell I'm a pretty enthusiastic guy, but I'm really passionate about this business. And one thing that I offer is a 30-minute free phone consultation just to talk shop with operators. If you got a challenge or a pain point that's keeping you up at night, you can do, just one thing. You can just reach out to me on my email, and I'm happy to talk to you. And you know, I set aside a couple of hours every single week just to talk to people that reach out to me. And it's my way of giving back to the industry. It's my way of keeping in touch with people and what their current issues are. And we learn. It's a back and forth exchange of ideas, but invariably I can give you you know, a little leg up on whatever's causing you the pain point or the challenge, and give you a new framework or way of thinking about it, or just benefit of, you know, 25 years of experience. So my email address, of course, is Roger, R-O-G-E-R, at restaurantrockstars.com. And I'm happy to talk to you if that's interesting to you.
No, I appreciate it. I think, you know, definitely today we talked about how to create the dream team and maximize your sales and profits. And definitely Roger can help you down that road. And just like always, you know, every Friday at 2:30 Eastern time, you can catch us here for the Q&A State of the Industry. And Roger, you've been a great help. And I'm sure, you know, always when I watch anything, I always look for at least one nugget. And I think there's plenty of nuggets that people watch this webinar they'll find. So I appreciate your time. And I'm sure everybody else does as well watching.
I really enjoyed speaking with you, Scott, and I think you're doing a great service for the industry. So thank you for that opportunity.
Thanks. Well, once again, you have a wonderful day, Roger. Everybody else, thanks for watching, and make your great day.
Thank you. Stay well, everyone.